I'm Jarmo Eskelinen of Virium Helsinki, and I'll be one of the co-hosts. And may I introduce Katalin Gallyas from City of Amsterdam over there, who has been designing the session and will be guiding you through the what we are actually trying to achieve. So, Katalin.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to host this session. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, now it's fine.
Okay, great. I'm very happy you chose this session. We are going to talk about externally networked cities. And I have really good innovation boosters today here with us. But before I start, I'm going to explain you how did we set up this session, and it's going to be highly interactive. So please stay with us. There will be lots of space for questions. But before I start, I would like to talk a little bit about my background and what are we doing in Amsterdam. So today we will have speakers here with us from the World Bank, from the Commission, from Future Cities Catapult, and all. And Forum Virium, of course, Jarmo. So what I'm doing, I'm working in Amsterdam, the Chief Technology Office. And I'm actually fighting for the right for cities to be tech-savvy, but also very transformative and agile. What I'm doing in my daily work is actually interfacing technology with policymakers. I try to translate them very often, open source movement, APIs, but I also work a lot with startup accelerators and citizens. What are the big questions about the futures in cities? Actually, I would like to pose one question. What are actually cities competing about? Is it about infrastructure? Is it about investments? Is it about talent? This is what we ask in policymaking, and it's interesting to emphasize how cities are making policies and what are the prevailing complex urban challenges in cities. Just to show you one example, what are the prevailing urban challenges in cities? One of the biggest challenges in cities are the density. How to reuse urban space very smartly, using also digital technologies. That's a very important question. Second challenge in Amsterdam for us is the mobility. How to make sure we are multimodal. We can actually integrate different sources of tools that are giving for you the best available information, depending on either you commuting with on the bicycle or by car. It should be available. And also how to use space smartly. The third problem we are actually investigating in the Chief Technology Office in Amsterdam, how to create a smart grid. What are the conditions and how to make sure you can be also an energy producer as a citizen. But currently it's more actually exciting to see that the market of providers is really big. For us as a city, it's very challenging to choose the right provider. If it's about infrastructure, if it's about investment, if it's about open data portal, it's like just for us almost a jungle. Just to show you, that's just an open data architecture in Amsterdam. It's very complex. It's very difficult for cities to find out, is this the way we want to go? Are we need something else? Is everybody involved in this decision? How can we design the best process? This is actually just an example I want to show you. How do we make policies? You see this table, this is how we make policies. Very often policymakers are very internally focused. They like to make charts. They like to make papers. Actually what I discovered in my journey last 3 years through European projects, that it's very highly, it has a highly value if you get out of this paper analysis and desktop research and you really try to get externally networked. The picture I chose, it's in the ODI summit 2 weeks ago, and this young girl who is speaking is a 13-year-old coder. She's actually already teaching older students how to code in Python and in Ruby. And this kind of knowledge you don't get just if you go to this kind of conferences, summits, you get external networks. So for me, this picture is a contradiction. How you work as policymakers and what can you gain if you go out of the city hall. This session today is about a discovery. It's actually very practically from my work. cities are lacking actually the capacity to be externally networked, whereas there is just so much knowledge outside. You see these networks, Enol, Eurocities. To me, this is a bunch of intelligence. They deliver us the intelligence, and cities should be capturing these moments. So I would like to introduce you our speakers today. To start first with Andrea from Future Cities Catapult, who is head of innovation. I'm very glad to work with Future Cities Catapult recently. We have 1 year history. And I must say that the story I discovered with Future Cities Catapult, that they very focused on multidisciplinary teams, involving citizens, and I think it's a really added value. Andrea, please take the stage.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? No? Yes? Great. My name is Andrea Edmunds, and I'm the Director of Innovation at the Future Cities Catapult. And I think more importantly than that, I'm a designer, and I've been designing for about 20 years now as a designer, an engineer, and as a consultant, mostly in the private sector, but designing anything you can imagine, from products to services to places. And I think what I'm bringing here today is this sense that design borrows from the world in order to innovate. And that's one of the themes of today, is drawing on networks and learning from others. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk with you about today, is essentially how cities can draw on innovation to best practices that are out there and working really well for the rest of the world. So there are 3 principles I thought I'd talk about specifically. One is making balanced teams. The second one is designing for people. And the third one is making data work for you. And I have lots to talk about, so I'm going to try to keep it very quick. So apologies if I whiz through my slides. The first one is balancing teams. And I think coming from the world of design, it's important to realize that we talk a lot about these 3 things, these desirability, feasibility, and viability as things that are working together, and that if you get to the center, that sweet spot in the center that is balancing desirability, feasibility, and viability, you will have the most impact and you will have successful innovation. I think what not so many people talk about is that these things are actually often working in tension and difficult to navigate. And what may work really well might be the right technological solution, actually the city can't afford. Or worse, what might be cheap and easy, people don't like and won't use. So it's really important to be balancing these things in order to have successful innovation. I think what's also interesting is to think about these with a team lens, because I think many of us in the audience probably can identify yourselves or your background or your expertise possibly more in one circle than in the others. You might find an ethnographic researcher or an anthropologist might sit, or a marketeer might sit in desirability, whereas a financial expert or an accountant might sit in viability, and obviously an engineer sits with feasibility. And I think it's having a team that understands and respects these other disciplines and priorities can help navigate you to the right success. So with a city lens, I think what's also interesting is that cities are driven to have a high quality of life, a vibrant economy, and a sustainable and strong infrastructure. And these things often are also slightly in tension with each other. So I think if cities can create innovation teams that represent their diverse city priorities, cross city silos, draw from external expertise beyond the city itself, so academia, business, other cities who've tried to attack the same problems. If you can do that, then you'll have more success. And I think also very importantly to try to create a culture of a team that's willing to work together to appreciate and respect these different priorities in order to get to the end goal. My next principle is designing for and with people, which I know lots of people are talking about. User-centered design, I'm very passionate about it. And I think when I'm talking to cities, the main issue is to move from perhaps a technology or even a service delivery point of view to a challenge or needs-led innovation point of view. And the famous, probably quite famous quote from Cedric Price, technology is the answer, but what was the question? And I think it's really important to not always just presume that technology is the answer or presume that you know how to implement the technology in the best possible way. So I wanted to talk about a case study we've been doing in Future Cities Catapult. We're calling Sensing London. And it started as any good innovation project with technology. And the idea was that we could see if we could develop a low-cost network of sensors that could, for air quality in particular, that could reproduce what the big, large, very expensive air quality sensors do now. And we're working with several technology partners to do this. And it was in one of the conversations with the sensor experts that they said, you know, we could talk all day about the pros and cons of sensor A versus sensor B, but really, regardless of what we choose, we know that air quality is poor, and what we really need to do is do something about it. So we said, that's a great idea, let's go talk to some people. So we went out and talked to some citizens about how they feel about air quality and pollution, and we chose some pretty interesting people. The woman on the upper right there never goes into London without wearing a mask, though when queried, it turns out she's not sure if it really protects her. The man on the lower left comes from Bogota and thinks that London has actually got crisp, clean, beautiful air. The man in the middle is Bernie. He's been driving a cab in London for 50 years and also thinks the air is quite good now because it used to be, he comes from the pea soup days when you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. We also talked with a number of mothers who are running their children to school, either in their car or pushing them in the pushchair next to the busy roads, just to get a real sense of the diversity of thinking around this topic. And of course, we came up with some insights. You know, the whole point of this kind of work is to understand what people's perceptions and mental models are often about a topic. And found that their perceptions of pollution were quite subjective rather than scientific. And so on top of this, we brainstormed lots and lots of ideas and are in the process now of prototyping them with the goal of having those be inspirational. But how can you make air quality more tangible, help people understand it better? Super local visualizations of the different pollutants in the air and how they work. Or also just helping people understand that exhaust is coming from their own car and their own driving habits are contributing to the problem. And obviously, another really strong network is designing with your citizens themselves or people around the world, actually. You know, there are lots and lots of crowdsourcing platforms for innovation right now where you can contribute ideas for your own city or for others. And it's a really great resource for cities. Transitioning to the third topic, the third principle, which we're really exploring quite a lot at Future Cities Catapult, is data and trying to make data work for you better as a city. I mean, as we all know, we're inundated with data now. There's just so much more. Obviously, 90% of all the data we have generated in the last 2 years. You know, we're all just completely deluged with it all the time, and frankly, know that we could be doing something with it, but we're just not sure what. So I think one of the things that we think is really important is merging the topic I just mentioned, which is understanding people on the qualitative, more subjective side of things, with what could arguably be a little bit more quantitative or slightly less subjective of big and open sources of data. And we think that both of these together can marry to help innovation work even better. There are many things. We've been working very closely with lots of cities, particularly in the UK, who are opening their data. I'm very proud of the number of data sets they've opened. London in particular has hundreds of data sets that they've opened. And the impact so far is that there have been about 100 applications for your smartphone, all about transport. So you can see there's a clear need there. But the question is how to make the use of all the other data that's out there. And I think what's really important for cities to start to do is to think of data more holistically than just opening it up. But how do you create an ecosystem and a network and a service around that data so that you can help people do more things with it? I think we also realize that turning data from numbers into something more visual is really quite useful. So if we can visualize data to help us make decisions, in the background there is another tool that we created for the Air Quality Project, where we put in data around bicycle air pollution, if you use bicycles, cars, or walk. We also put in economic data, and you can drag the levers on each side and hopefully make a decision about where to invest as a city. There's also an image in the middle there is a picture of Hyde Park in London. We also drew from other sources of data, not from the city. So we got some data from a mobile phone provider. So I think it's really important as the city could draw from this other network, a private sector source of data, to learn from that. And quite interestingly, Hyde Park often does a customer survey once a year and essentially was able to get more data in a few minutes of mobile phone data than they were able to do from the past 5 years. So in summary, I've talked to you about a number of ways cities can network and draw from the world of design, basically beg, borrow, and steal, but very much about balancing your teams, designing for and with people, and making data work better for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, so much for this very insightful presentation from Future Cities Catapult. I think it's a really great example to see how you can translate technology to cities and to stimulate the user-drivenness. Now we're going to spin out from city scope to global scope. And I would like to invite our next speaker to the stage, Arturo Muente-Kunigami from the World Bank, who is going to speak about how they actually try to reuse smart technology and try to disseminate it also for developing countries. Arturo, please take this.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to explain how we realize the importance of these external networks to foster innovation by walking you through our approach or how we got here to smart cities. The World Bank has these, we call them the twin goals: eradicating extreme poverty and shared prosperity, which is increasing the income of the bottom 40% in every country. So we started interacting with certain cities and we realized, well, that we have a problem. And this is beautiful, actually, but it's also worrisome. It's Mexico City, and yeah, it's really bad. In some places, and it's not a secret. For those of you who don't speak Spanish, that means everything is bad, and this is from Colombia, and you see that everywhere. So population is increasing, and you know, we feel it. Now, do you also realize that the increase is going to happen in developing countries? I mean, 90% of urban growth will happen in developing countries. We have 50-something% of the population already living in urban areas. And that means about 1 million people a week, 1 million people a week moving to cities in developing countries. We also realize that, of course, in terms of size, we all worry about our huge cities, 10 million plus, but a lot of people, more than 50%, 77%, will live in less than 500,000 inhabitants, agglomerations or cities, which made us realize also that, how can we help cities innovate? How can we help cities deal with this phenomena when each city is truly different? And there's not a lot of space for cookie cutter, which we are very good at, regardless of shape, and we've tried many. So incomes. How can technology actually help tackle these problems? So this is something that happened in collaboration with several partners and came up principles for ICT for information and communication technologies for development. These are 9 different principles that are based a lot on design thinking and on open innovation. And gathered at that time, I think it was us, we had DFID, we had UN, several of their institutions. We have USAID, who's actually leading this effort. I'm going to walk through just some of them. I understand I don't have that much time. But at the end, I'll also show the URL. And we're actually looking for collaboration and creating networks around the principles. So the first one, of course, is designed with the user. This is just a snapshot of hackathon that we did in Colombia, 3 different cities. And the important thing here is not the actual hack that we carried out, but was how we identified the problems that were included here. This is a very short anecdote, but when we started this conversation with local authorities and even with World Bank people in the country, transport and citizen safety was mentioned as the main issue that citizens were facing. And we still, of course, wanted to reach out and talk to civil society, talk to citizens at large to some extent. And what we soon realized is that health was the main issue for them. It was top on every single conversation we had, and yet for the policymakers it was not that clear. This hackathon had 45 teams, 41 of them dealt with health problems. So there you go. You talk with citizens, you have conversations with them instead of figuring out what worries them, and they might actually tell you that you're wrong. The second one is to understand the ecosystem, and we see the city as an ecosystem, and that's something that needs to be stressed. Really, it's not only about government. Of course, government is sitting on a lot of information that's very valuable, but there's also private sector and academia and even civil society and citizens that can make part of the ecosystem that can help solve city problems. We put here the Urban Living Lab as an engine or as a dynamo that we think can help bring the dynamic of that ecosystem in terms of helping solve problems in the city. We also have open data. And then it's not only open data, I'm going to go through each one of them, but it's basically an open culture. With open data, what we realized, as Katalin mentioned before, is that not every city is ready or even understands the power of open data. So we made up this, made up sounds really bad. We designed this open methodology. You can actually find it on the web with experts in open data from the UK and the US. It's available for anyone to implement. It's a readiness assessment that basically helps a city understand how ready they are in terms of opening their data, where should they start, and what will take them towards a hopefully successful open data initiative. Open standards, the best example that I've seen, I mean, there are many out there, but I think that European project, City Service Development Kit or City SDK, I think it's really very powerful. Since it's standard, sometimes it's difficult to translate into something that policymakers can understand, but basically projects like these allow you to innovate and to replicate in a very efficient way so that you don't have to basically reinvent the wheel when dealing with similar problems in different contexts. We also are very keen on open innovation. This is another workshop that we had, and it sounds very cliche, but when you have policymakers together with academia, together with civil society, in a very distressed open environment, just thinking out loud about potential problems potential solutions to problems, you come up with very creative ideas, and those ideas can actually be implemented. So this is in Chile, I think. Yeah, Chile. So open in general, open innovation, open standards, open data is something that we're pushing a lot for, especially when trying to crack these problems in the cities. Reuse and improve. These are just snapshots of two what are called commons. So commons for Europe and its sort of predecessor, Civic Commons, that later was migrated into Commons for America. But basically these repositories where you can basically put and take code from or solutions or apps or systems, applications that have been developed in different instances and different places, that can later be used and reused by other cities. The most, I think, a common or known example is the Adopt My Hydrant or Adopt a Hydrant that was used in Boston, and then the same core code was used for Adopt a Siren in Honolulu, and then Adopt a street in Chicago. So, you know, and I think several other instances of this one in particular, but basically how can cities help each other creating and building on top of what has been built by other cities. And the last one that I want to talk about is Be Collaborative. This one these are just snapshots from the event that we had yesterday, which we called Citizens. And it's basically what we want to do here is an exchange between peers and experts that are keen on doing open innovation and follow basically all the principles. Once you read the principles, you realize in many cases that you've been doing them and you've been actually carrying them out. It's just that I think it's reinforcing and it's nice for those of us who have been doing it to find out that there are, you know, a network of peers that think alike and that are actually implementing it. The principles are listed here. Like I said, the main lead in this effort is USAID, but we were part of the design of the principles and we're very keen on working with them. I just wanted to have a minute and a half with two examples. They are not your typical smart city examples. I don't want to talk about something that you might already seen, even though this you might have already seen. This one is called Miraculous, and they talk about the importance of networks in a broader sense. Miraculous is a solution basically that has been done by a group of peers from Mexico, Israel, Chile, and Panama, I think. I must be forgetting someone. But basically it's an early detection blood test to detect cancer. It's been presented in the last TED Global in Rio in October. Basically, it's with a drop of blood, they have this technology and this science behind it. Don't ask me about it. The device is actually 3D printed. The source is open. And that's the kind of, I think, innovation that could not happen otherwise. Basically what they are aiming at is that you can detect whether you have cancer or not before showing symptoms, which, as you know, in many cases, once you show symptoms, it might be too late. So right now, they are on a trial, I understand, in Germany. They have been able to, or at least they are doing it for breast cancer and I think a couple of others, I don't remember, but this is really interesting. You can find the TED Talk if you just Google Miraculous. And again, just because they were able to meet and it's a network of peers and it's open, most of it. The other one, this SPIROMETER, I don't know if you know about COPD, it's a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's the third cause of deaths in the world, I think even more than AIDS. This device helps you diagnose it by blowing on it and measuring your lung capacity. The beauty of this is that it's been designed by a 15-year-old in a fab lab, in a tech shop, which it's a maker space. So again, leveraging on networks that you know, support her knowledge, training, and basically figuring out that there's this problem that, by the way, one of these devices commercially costs 100 times more than what this costs. It's about $30 to $50, depending on the Arduino chip that you're using, which is, again, open hardware. So these are only two examples I wanted to show in terms of the power of networks and the power of innovation when you find around the world peers like you. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Arturo. It's very nice to see that you mentioned City SDK and Code for Europe projects, because for us these are really important European projects that are advocating experimental platforms. And now we are going back to Europe. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is very important for European cities, Nikolaos Isaris, who is the Deputy Head of Experimental Platforms in DG Connect. He's from Brussels, and he will explain more about the value of platforms.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I represent the European Commission. Specifically, we deal with how the future internet can enable solutions for cities and citizens. And when I was invited to participate in this session, I thought, okay, what are the external networks that we are talking about actually? What networks are there that are external to the city that, however, help them find solutions for the citizens? And I came up with these three, and I want to explain during my presentation how what we do in the European Commission helps cities network in terms of having access to funds, network towards other cities, and network also towards platforms, developers of solutions. So I'll present to you 4 things that we do, and I will try to explain how these 4 things help cities create these external networks that they need. Just as a brief introduction, what we do is actually encompassing the whole spectrum from something which is very research-oriented to something which is actually a commercial rollout of a solution. So we have the whole spectrum of activities, and I will start with the first one, which we call the European Innovation Partnership for Smart Cities and Communities. Actually, what this is a partnership of cities, but also the industry and the citizens themselves. We are inviting them to come together and define what are their common challenges. So there you see already the first external network aspect. We invite cities to come together to define common challenges, and we ask them to come together also with representatives from the industry that may have solutions to these challenges. So this is already a first external network. We ask them to come forward and express their commitments, and we had actually in 2004 we had more than 350 joint commitments to work together to define and find solutions to problems that today's cities face. And these 350 commitments came from around 2,500 partners in 32 countries, and you see they represented a whole range of types of entities and stakeholders. Not only public authorities, that was only 1/3 of them, but you had also businesses, you had academic and research institutions, and citizens themselves. So this partnership is fine, but where do you get the funds to actually implement these solutions? And we said that one of the external networks is actually providing you access to the funds. So the funds come from our framework research program, which is called Horizon 2020. It will run from 2014 to 2020. And in 2014, we had earmarked 90 million euros for funding what we call lighthouse projects in this area. And in 2015, 108 million. So we invite cities to come together and submit proposals, and not only cities. The concept here is that for the lighthouse projects, you have 2 or 3 leading cities, 2 or 3 or more follower cities, as we call them, but you have in the consortium industry representatives, especially SMEs, and then it should be clear, and there should be a clear, ambitious plan, urban plan, that will be implemented. It should not be a piecemeal approach of one problem at a time, one city at a time. It should be networking cities together, and it should be part of a plan. The second thing that we do in the Commission to enable this kind of external networks to the cities is what is closer to my heart, because I work on this particular file, is what we call future internet research and experimentation. This is a kind of holistic approach, whereas the Innovation Partnership focuses more on energy questions and transport questions. This actually looks at the big picture of how ICT can help cities define solutions. And what we do actually is we invite them to deploy the solutions and experiment with these solutions. So we have, over the years, funded a number of projects. Some of them were mentioned by Arturo. Some of them maybe you know. For example, one project that we are very proud of is the Smart Santander project, which was actually the whole city of Santander, became an experimental platform, deployed thousands of sensors and tried to solve a number of questions and a number of challenges in the city. We have also an upcoming project, and we are quite happy about that. It will start in January 2015. It's called Organicity, and it brings together in its first phase the cities of Aarhus in Denmark, the city of London, and the city of Santander. And it will be a very interesting approach because it will combine the top-down definition of challenges and solutions with a bottom-up approach that comes from the citizens. So the citizens of the cities will have a say in what type of questions the project will pursue and how the open calls of the projects will be defined, etc. So we are very happy about this. There was a reference also to CitySDK. CitySDK, or City Software Development Kit, has developed, as Arturo said, a development kit that is open, that is standard, and can be actually transposed in many different countries, cities, etc. And it's also a good transition to my third, let's say, point, which is FIWARE. FIWARE, or Future Internetware, is again an open platform, and CitySDK will integrate with it. It's an open platform where you can find technology enablers, generic enablers that are also open and standard, and help cities and help developers and help startups define solutions for cities. FIWARE has launched this acceleration program with 16 accelerators in different domains. One of them is smart cities, and are inviting SME startups and other companies to come and develop solutions for the cities. FIWARE is in the Smart City Expo, so they have a stand here. I don't remember the exact number of the stand, and they organize sessions. They have a session tomorrow and on Thursday on what can FIWARE do for your city. So the times are mentioned on the slide, and how can your smart city application benefit from FIWARE. So if you have an interest in that, you are invited to join the sessions. And the last thing I want to say, which is again showing how we try to enable these external networks to the cities, not only to get cities to work together, but also to have access to funds and to have access to innovative solutions. I want to say two things about new financing instruments that we have actually designed in the new research program. One is the SME instrument. This is something which is addressed, as you understand, completely to single SMEs or groups of SMEs, and it takes them by the hand, more or less, from the starting point of the proof of concept of a solution for a city, and takes them to a demonstration of the solution, to market replication, and to commercialization. This is something which is also part of our Europe 2020 growth and jobs strategy, and it tries to actually give a boost to the SME market and try to put money in this market. The second thing, and maybe this is also important for city representatives if you are here, is what we call pre-commercial procurement. I think in Spanish it's compra agregada. And actually what this means is that we ask cities to procure innovative solutions together. So if they have a common challenge, we ask them to come together and define it so they can draft the specifications of what they want to address. And we ask them to tender together, but not necessarily procure the solution together, because sometimes there are different national rules. So they have different rules on how they procure solutions. This is also quite interesting. There will be money devoted to that in 2015. It's about 130 million. And if you want more information about that, there will be also a conference devoted to innovation procurement, and the dates are mentioned on the slide. So I think I'm just on time. And these are all the reference for more information about the 4 things I mentioned. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikolaos. Just before we arrive to our last speaker and moderator for the interactive session, I would like to recapture very shortly. We've seen the external network, the cities are actually making use of user-driven approach. We've seen very good funding instruments and also from the World Bank, of course, how they try to transfer technology to developing countries. To me, if it goes about intelligence and external network cities, innovation agencies are key, very important enablers. So if it's about setting the scene in innovation, to me it's very important to work with Forum Virium. So I would like to invite Jarmo Eskelinen to the stage, who is the CEO of Forum Virium.
Thanks. The man of many hats. Okay, I won't be using any slides since we'll sort of drift off to the discussion part of the session after this, so I thought it's nicer not to do slides at this stage, and you've probably seen quite a few slides already. So I thought to close this part to talk a bit about networks for interoperability. So if you remember nothing else about my talk, just remember he was the guy who talked about city-to-city interoperability, how to make cities better share solutions. First, about Forum Virium, just one sentence. We are a 9-year-old innovation unit, innovation company of Helsinki. It's a part of the City of Helsinki group, and basically we have one task, and that is to build collaboration and hands-on shared projects between the public sector, the companies, and the citizens. So to bring the city community together to innovate in digital services. How to make better services for citizens through collaboration. That's what we do. And we've been in the open data scene for almost 5 years now. We started 2009. Helsinki Region InfoShare hosts about 1,200 datasets as we speak. It's now a day-to-day practice of Helsinki, and it creates healthy startups and especially efficiency for the city itself. I think it's one of the aspects which is often forgotten when we talk about open data, that the public sector itself benefits greatly from open data and open approach because it creates collaboration across different siloed departments. One of the things I think I need to mention linked to cities. Cities tend to think that they are unique. And of course, I mean, Barcelona has its own character and Helsinki is pretty different. But when it comes for searching for solutions to give better services for citizens, the challenges are not that unique. So cities are very wary at adapting solutions developed elsewhere, even though they would be totally suitable for your city. So we tend to reinvent the wheel repeatedly. And it also happens internally in the cities. I think when I listen to cities speak about, in our city, this horizontal collaboration across departments is very hard. This is a specifically Stockholm problem. That's not the case. Intersectoral department is a universal problem in each and every city in the world. So it's not your unique challenge you are facing. And the tools developed for that in some other cities might be totally useful for you. So from that viewpoint, let's discuss why we should care about interoperability at this very point of time. And I think that links to ICT strongly, because cities are in flux, cities change. And one of the things which is changing in cities is that we have now a city community empowered with interactive means. That wasn't the case. I mean, communities have always been good at solving problems, but in the analog times, it was tougher because it was harder to gather the groups together. Now we have means and methods to bring together groups of solvers to work with us quicker. And to be able to give the citizens the services they deserve, the cities should enable the city community to do it. And that doesn't mean the city as an organization, but the city as a holistic entity. The city as an organization can't provide all the services which we demand and which we actually should have in the city. It's far too complex and varied field. And why is that? Because it might have been that a good service in the past was the same service for anyone. But with the tools to do interactive service provision, the good service is the right service for everyone. And that might be very different for me and my 75-year-old mommy. And it should be so that I, as a citizen, can affect what kind of service package of the city, urban services, I am using. And the city can't give me that. The city can enable that, but it can't solve that challenge alone. So that's maybe the key issue why cities should care about interoperability, about collaboration across the whole community. We see big urban innovations coming to our cities, and I think they're good examples of what we are facing. Some of the most disruptive innovations in urban context lately, for example, accommodation network Airbnb. Who has used Airbnb? You know it? Well, it's messing up the hotel market of New York. It's messing up the rental apartment market in Berlin. And it's not designed by cities, it just comes there. And with the speed of the internet, it spreads from 0 to 34,000 cities in 6 years' time. And I think as cities, instead of trying to oppose the development, we should adapt it and try to benefit from the power which the internet speed innovation can give to the cities. Very concrete thing which we should tap into is the sharing economy, things like crowdsourcing solutions. I mean, companies are doing it, we are using it. If you log to Wikipedia lately, you are logging into the biggest information repository in the world, which is completely community created. I mean, the people did it, not a publishing house, not a company, not a government, but community. So there's immense power in the networked way to do things. And yet the cities actually don't tap into that power very well. We don't use our citizens as a resource to renew our cities to the extent which we could. Why that is? There are different reasons. One is that we are not used to it. It's new. Second is that we think that our problems are unique. It's not, if they did that in Stockholm, it won't work in Helsinki. Definitely not in that case. Stockholm and Helsinki, neighboring cities, certainly won't work, even though both are Nordic countries. And the third is a bit more trickier, and that is that cities were not designed to be interoperable. Nobody thought of that. We have to retrofit our cities. We have our existing legacies. They can be processes. They definitely are laws and regulations which are not compatible. And then it's also software and hardware. We have massive legacies. I mean, in Helsinki, I think the amount of different ICT systems we have is in the range of 600 and something. It's hard to harmonize that even within one city, nevertheless across cities. And if we continue doing this, what we are facing is the mathematics of scale which will turn against us. There are 300 plus municipalities in Finland. STV Admiral 2 days back in a presentation estimated there are 100,000 municipalities in Europe. So if each and every one of these municipalities procures separately each and every solution they need, that's where the public money goes then. And I'm not even sure it's good for business, because I'm not sure anyone wants to tailor-make their solution 100,000 times across each and every municipality in Europe. There must be a better way, because 90% of what functions in one place will function in another place. And that leads me to the point of using openness as a tool to manage interoperability and to manage complexity of city systems. To bring the developer scene, the citizens, and other cities in a shared task to harmonize our innovation environment, dataset by dataset, interface by interface, across using pragmatic projects to connect the cities together. So open approach to data, open approach to interfaces, and to processes. In practice, City SDK has been mentioned, so I won't go very deep into that. It was a good first rehearsal in that. We worked with 8 cities from Istanbul to Barcelona, Rome, Lisbon, Amsterdam, Manchester, harmonizing first an interface in one city at a time, so citizen feedback, mobility, and tourism, and then replicating that interface to other cities. Quite sounds simple, not so simple in fact, but what we ended up with is first open data interface to Istanbul Transport Authority, 14.5 million people. It's quite a lot more interesting market for developers if they get access to Rome and Istanbul and Barcelona and Helsinki clientele than if they have to do their solution only for the 600,000 people of Helsinki. So it seems to be doable. What I would like to close with is some things which I would like to share which seem to be working when we build this sort of a grassroots up interoperability across cities. First of all, it's about finding and connecting the change makers. And change makers are not necessarily mayors. They could be mayors, then we are lucky if that is the case. But they might be located anywhere in the organization. In our case, in open data, it was the director of the statistical department of the city. She's 64, but she's a radical open data advocate. And she has been the change maker. And they are normally alone in their organizations, and they are pretty happy if you are able to connect them with their peers from their own city or from other cities, because change makers feel isolated easily, because they might be surrounded by people who are not change makers, who are good people nevertheless, but still. Second, to work with the developer community. So there's lots of brain power out there. Jay's law says that no matter how clever you are, no matter how clever people you have in your city, most clever people don't work for your company. And of course, that's universally true with 6 billion people, and that is also true for each and every city. There's lots of brain power in the city we should tap into, and it can be done in a systematic way. We have worked with embedding coders. So Commons for EU project had a Code for Europe activity in which we embedded coders in the city. And it works beautifully. So when you have internal knowledge of how ICT is developed, you can cut through jargon which tries to make things appear more complex than it is. And last, I think it's important to understand that what we should come to, it's not this massive similar platform for each and every city in the world which manages everything. That's something which might be sold to you out there. But if you think of it, cities are far more complex creatures than companies. You don't need an ERP to manage a business process everywhere in the city. City of Helsinki has an orchestra and a slaughterhouse and a few kindergartens. So what kind of ERP would support all of these functions? What would be the benefit of that? I think a good city platform should be a modular backbone in which you can bring your own service, which you can design as a service provider unit from your own needs, but which supports some shared elements, the minimum level of interoperability, which can be flexible, and things are interoperable when they are needed to be interoperable. Not all the time, not constantly, not like a process where you change this and this changes, but when you need, you can link things. And openness is the trick to achieve that. So bring your own service is the target, and lastly, I'll throw in the thought that maybe we should go from buying systems to actually buying development life cycles from our ICT partners. Instead of trying to define that this is the service we need, why don't we define that during a 5 years period, we might achieve that kind of a service by working together between the service, ICT service providers and the city. But we are not quite sure if that's the goal. Can we procure a process? That's what I will close with. Okay, now I'll ask back to the stage all the speakers. And you will have a chance to ask questions and discuss. Katalin said that this is a highly interactive session and we have yet to ask a single question. So to do as we preach, at least try to achieve that. She has a mic now.
Yeah, please,
right,
if you have questions, go ahead.
We have everybody here. I hope you still remember what they said. And let's actually kick off, not as we planned, with a question from me to you, but let's start with the audience. If you have a question, please do, or a comment. If you don't, I will speak anyway.
Here we have a question already from
a
volunteer.
Sorry, just a comment. I'm Andrew, and I'm one of the Code for Europe people who've been sat in a city in Scotland, Aberdeen, for the last 8 months. And it's a really great experience, and hope it's something which continues in other places again and again.
We
have an advocate here too.
We couldn't have get any better testimonials.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
It's hard to see from here, but Katalin will see you better. So.
Buenas tardes, soy Omar Maldonado de México. La pregunta es la siguiente: yo he participado en la administración urbana en mi país. Ahora en el sector privado hemos tratado de implementar o implementado algunas tecnologías en el caso del desarrollo urbano, pero ha sido muy difícil, o sea, lo que es la transferencia tecnológica, porque hay una resistencia, digamos, a nivel gubernamental. ¿Qué opciones hay para la iniciativa privada? La pregunta para Arturo Muente, para poder hacer ese desarrollo tecnológico, pero de la mano de organizaciones internacionales.
That was probably for you. If it was for me, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Should I answer?
Do it in Spanish.
Okay. Bueno, mira, lo que estamos tratando de decir justamente aquí es que hay una oportunidad para que la ciudad pueda trabajar mejor con los ciudadanos. Eso no quiere decir, por supuesto, que en la parte de los sistemas que sostienen la prestación de servicios públicos de la ciudad no hay una oportunidad para hacer alianzas público-privadas o incluso para soluciones del sector privado. Lo que estamos nosotros en todo caso proponiendo es que hay problemas que surgen en la ciudad que no son evidentes para los hacedores de política hasta que no se acercan al ciudadano, y que es ese mismo ciudadano el que puede ayudar a solucionarlas en un contexto en el que no hay suficientes recursos. Hay otra conversación que creo que es a la que te refieres, en términos de qué tan eficiente puede ser el gobierno local o un gobierno local en el uso de sus recursos para la prestación de los servicios que hoy presta. Pero ahí sí que hay oportunidad para mejorar mucho la relación de la eficiencia de la prestación, y como siempre yo creo que hay un espacio para el sector privado.
And Nikolaos, who, like all the Commission people, speaks all the languages in the world, will also...
I don't speak all the languages in the world. I just want to say one thing which has to do with public-private partnerships and how these models and paradigms can be transposed in other countries. The Fiverr example that I mentioned in my presentation is the result of a public-private partnership. It started in 2011, and we tried to bring together public administrations and public money with private companies and to build this open platform. The good thing is now there are efforts, I don't know if you are aware, but as I said at the Fiverr stand, they will explain everything about it. Now there are efforts to transpose these solutions to other countries and to try and get their private-public partnerships as well. And the very first countries that we are doing that is Mexico and Brazil. So currently there is an attempt. So we've worked with private companies and with administrations in Mexico, and we are trying to transpose these solutions there as well. So maybe this is also something you would like to explore.
Perdón, solo para agregar, he tenido conversaciones que empiezan similarmente, así que no sé si ese era, digamos, lo que estaba subyaciendo en tu pregunta, pero hay mucha gente que cree que la cultura open o que el open source es el fin, y por favor traduzcan esto como doom of private sector, del sector privado, y no es cierto. Es simplemente, por ejemplo, la migración hacia una cultura de software como servicio. Es simplemente el realizar o el darse cuenta que efectivamente, en vez de comprar, como decía Jarmo, en Europa, asumiendo que Esteba tenía razón y hay 100.000 municipios, no comprar 100.000 sistemas igualitos, sino en todo caso compras uno o haces uno, y sobre eso pues lo que tienes es un ecosistema de empresas, ¿por qué no?, que ayudan a adaptar cada uno a 100.000 ciudades.
That was an important point, I think, because I think we currently have a smart city market. We don't have a functioning smart city market, even though this is a smart city expo, and that's because you need to still tailor-make your solutions to each and every solution. That's not good even for the businesses. So if we have a better modular, more major market, you could have modules from different vendors to tap in your system and from different markets. More questions from the floor? Will Katalin also join us on the stage for the final few minutes? Okay, and maybe also sit down to be a bit more relaxed here. We have a few minutes to discuss, and I think one of the things which would be nice to chat with you more about is how does it work in practice. There are different players here from the policy making and from the practitioner level. So I will actually start with Future Cities Catapult, which comes close to building sort of a national network of smartness in the UK. So how do you make the competing and fighting cities not to compete and fight?
You're asking me the hard question. I think what we're trying to do with the Future Cities Catapult is to stress that you can learn by prototyping and reaching out to other organizations. I mean, one of the things we talked about is that you don't have the interoperability at the moment, but we can try things out. And by trying small, you can not have to invest so much and take less risk in order to see if it's going to work. So if you set good goals and try things on a small scale, then you can see if it's going in the right direction before you make bigger investments.
So it makes it easy to be an early adopter, which normally is very expensive.
Exactly. And that's again where you can reach out to broader networks, because perhaps there's a private sector network just sitting right in front of you that you could use to experiment before you as the city have to take the deep plunge.
Very good. Katalin, in Amsterdam you are quite good at, you have actually a heritage of empowering different semi-private entities of actors, media centers, coders, app developers to work with the cities. So any lessons we need to be shared with the others, or do you want to keep it all for yourself?
No, please not. On the contrary, actually, what I noticed in 3 years, we started to have hackathons due to European projects, that the knowledge going around in these networks is just immense. It's like it's tremendously valuable, because it is for us a kind of protecting layer to prevent the city to be vendor locked. I go very often to ODI, OKF, Open Knowledge Foundation, to chat with them about what do you think about this solution? How do you like this infrastructure? Is it not vendor locking? And we can pose these questions, and it really for me such an eye-opening experience to talk. And I think this is the way cities can be more tech savvy, and you will feel more secure and also more peace, because you're getting less jumpy that we have to buy this corporate package or the other one, because we have a kind of resilience in the backbone that we've seen the solutions.
By the way, Next time you see your corporate partners, ask them when was the last time they bought a big corporate package, because that might be a few years back. Companies don't purchase that way anymore. They buy modular solutions, yet they sell us different stuff. All right. Any other good examples? I mean, Nikolaos, you have seen million projects. Are there amongst those ones what kind of pragmatic ways have you seen which make it easier to build this network trust amongst networks?
Thanks. Yeah, one thing I wanted to say is that we are discussing here external networks and whether and how cities compete and how decisions are taken, etc. We should remember that one important network, first of all, is the knowledge and information network. So events like this one and other initiatives are very good opportunities for cities to actually learn about each other and to actually know what's happening. But the second thing I wanted to say is that no matter how many successful examples we see and we have and we fund, one thing which is quite important is there is a level of politics in cities, and we should not forget that well, depending on the political system in certain countries, in most cases there is also political will and political decision behind how smart a city can be. And you have sometimes smart cities which are, excuse my saying, not smart at all, because they are smart during the tenure of a certain mayor or a political group, let's say, and then it stops being smart anymore because it has been designed in a way that served the interests maybe of the political leadership at the time. So I think that the successful examples that we have seen are the ones where all this was part of a plan and was not necessarily linked to a political leader or a political group or a mayor doing his or her stuff for 5 years, but it was based on a plan, and the plan continues even when the political leadership changes.
Is there I mean, I read a thing like, I mean, one of the things we discussed earlier was that networking is not part of the city tasks. City's task is to take care of the citizens. So how do you build the link between the basic tasks which you have to do and these kind of activities? You work, Arturo, with cities who are facing different kinds of challenges. Quite often they are on the quite basic level. Have you been able to convince them beyond the project scope to have a longer vision?
So, yes, the answer is yes.
You can't say anything else, of course.
No, I related to your question and related to what Nico was saying. I think it's underestimated the role that intermediaries have. And by intermediaries, I mean these entities, groups, even a couple of people that sit in between the bureaucracy and the government and the citizens. And it becomes pretty obvious once you start looking at how these successful examples have been working, that you see either Forum Virium, either Katalin, and back in the case of Amsterdam, the partnership that they have. We're starting to see appearing these kind of intermediaries in other countries. In Chile, in Colombia, there are some. In Brazil, so you start seeing these in Buenos Aires bodies or groups of people that are willing, and of course it depends on the local authority to be willing to listen and to take their input. But there's a role there that is
networking motor.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's network of who?
Yeah. Huh? So networking engines are needed.
If I may just add one comment on Arturo's.
So we need to close, so let's go last comments.
Just touching upon your comment, what worries me in City Hall in policy making, that very often they try to outsource risks. And very often we are looking for resilient solutions, turnkey solutions. Whereas I think that for cities, the unique chance is to be modular and try to, sometimes even failing is good. And this costs so much energy to train cities on that.
Maybe that's also one of the roles for intermediaries, because they can give the license to fail
famous last words.
Famous last
Okay,
words.
just one thing I want to say is we have been discussing quite a lot about big cities. So we are discussing London and Istanbul and et cetera. One thing I want to say is extremely important that these solutions are also there for small and medium cities. So one thing I want to let's say emphasize is that we have also this aspect in our projects, the projects that we select and fund. There may be the leading cities in various initiatives, but there should always be the follower cities, as we call them, which are the ones which not necessarily have either the chief technology officer or the big own funds to put on the table as well, but they have really the needs and the challenges, and they want to have the solution. So it's extremely important when you do your external networks with other cities to always include also the small and the medium ones, and then you will see how easy it is to replicate and to find solutions. Sometimes the solutions come from the small and medium
They
ones.
often can be more agile, actually,
Yeah.
doing change, yes. Andrea?
I think I'd agree with that. It feels like that having a mix of different sized cities around and innovators will help you draw back in both ways on your network. And I was also wanting to comment on the point about the political nature of cities, and that's where I think that there is a power of drawing on citizens and stories and qualitative input to this rich data I mentioned, and bringing that together with big data to help make decisions, because politics is quite passionate and about stories, and I think that's why it is really important to come back to citizens and real stories of the experience of the services that citizens deliver.
And Arturo.
I just want to say that key in all what we've just discussed, I think that in order to be collaborative, in order to build the networks, in order to change or improve or be more efficient in our cities, openness is key. And if anything, I would like you to take that statement, because I think our cities, our policymakers, and our citizens would all benefit by more openness.
Thank you. That's a good final word. So openness as a tool, not as an ideology.
Thank you so much for attending our session, and I really hope you got inspired about the networks, the power of networks, and I was very honored to have our speakers here today. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.